Hi, this is Craig Stocks, and in this video we're going to explore some techniques you can use when you're doing a sky replacement in Photoshop. So this is particularly targeted at Photoshop users and in particular situations where you might want to drop a different sky into an image and you are faced with edges like the bushes here in this photo, which was taken inside a slot canyon on a somewhat overcast day. So the exposure was for the slot canyon walls, but the sky winds up being almost pure white. So what we want to do is drop in a different sky into this region, and the sky that we'll use is this one. And it's not a bad idea to have a folder of just sky pictures that you've collected looking in different directions at different times of day, different kinds of clouds, because you want the sky to be somewhat consistent with the image. This one isn't really perfect, but it'll work. It's close enough. So what I want to do to start with, I need to get both images in the same file. So from this image, I'll select the Move tool, which you can just tap V for the Move tool. And what I want to do is basically click and drag this image into the other image. And to do that, I will click and hold, and then drag up to the tab where the other image is located, continue holding the mouse button, and then drag back down into the image, and then let go. And what it does is drop that second image as a new layer inside the first one. Now in this case you can see that it's actually smaller pixel dimensions, so it's a little bit on the small side. It's not positioned in the right place, but of course we can move it around, we can resize it and so forth. It's also on top of the background layer, and I really would prefer to have the layers in a different order. So I'm going to come over to the layer stack, and I'm going to click on this lock icon to unlock the background layer, and now it's renamed to layer 0 automatically. And then I can just click and drag to move that up to the top of the layer stack. So now it's on top, and then the sky that I'm going to use in this area is below. So generally, if you've worked with these before, you know that we need to typically make some sort of a selection and apply a layer mask. So to do that, I'm going to grab the Quick Selection tool, and I'm just going to do a very quick selection of the rocks, and it'll probably pick up some of the bush, but what I really want to do is just get this rock area selected. And then when I click on the little front-loading washer icon down here at the bottom, that will add a layer mask. And since there's an active selection, it will include that selection as part of the layer mask. And so there's the sky. We can now see the sky through the masked area of this upper layer. I can come back to the sky and again go to the Move tool. I can move it around. I could tap Control T to go into Free Transform and change the scale and change the position of it and get a more logical position for it. The problem, if we look at the bushes, we've got gaps in the bushes where the masking wasn't very effective, and then we've got a lot of pieces of the bush that are just missing. So to fix this, I'm going to do two things. First, this area of the mask is not doing me any good at all. We've got some other problems up here. So I'm just going to go to the mask and be sure that I'm on the mask and not the layer, which you can judge by the double outline around the mask versus the double outline around the layer. So be sure that I have the mask targeted. I'll go to the Brush tool. I'll be painting with black as my foreground color at 100% opacity and 100% flow. And when I paint on the mask, it's just going to paint out those areas where the mask was not very effective. And really, even along here, we've got a little bit of a glow. And you don't have to be real precise. I'm just fixing areas where the mask didn't work very well. What I want to do now is duplicate this layer, and the easiest way to duplicate something is just with a Control J, which you'll sometimes hear people refer to as jumping it to a new layer. And I don't need the layer mask here, so I'm going to just delete the layer mask. And of course now we're back to where we started. The magic comes when I change the blending mode. Right now the blending mode is normal, which means that the pixels on this layer simply overlay whatever's below it. There's a whole host of different blending modes, darken, lighten, overlay, and so forth. And if I choose the darken blending mode, what that's going to do is any place the pixels on this layer are darker than what's below, it's going to show the darker pixels. Any place where the pixels are lighter will be ignored. So when I go to darken blending mode, like magic, because the bushes that were sticking out into the sky were generally darker than the sky, the bushes show up against the sky behind it without any special masking or anything special. Some of the areas where we painted this out, we may want to come back and use a brush using white this time and refine some of those edges. Depends a little bit on the tone of the foreground and how bright your sky is. Sometimes you need to be a little bit careful. Sometimes if your foreground is darker everywhere than the sky, it will just kind of magically drop that in. Now, in this case, the sky looks a little bit dark. If I go back to the sky layer and let's add a curves adjustment, and any adjustment layer is only going to affect what's below it in the layer stack. So any changes I make here will affect only the sky and not the foreground. So if I want to lighten up some of those very dark clouds to make it a little bit less overwhelming, I can do that, and that also helps some of the bushes show up a little better. So the trick here is using a darken blending mode to blend in the fuzzy areas along the edge. Let's look at a different example real quick, and we'll go to this image. And this was taken in the same visit to the Slot Canyon. This was kind of an interesting looking tree, but because of the overcast sky, the sky is just almost pure white. And I've already added a second layer. If I turn off the top layer, which is the tree, you can see that we have a sunset, which is actually taken over the ocean. If I just do a quick select on this layer and then add my mask, that does a good job with the foreground, but again we have this problem with the brush along the horizon, and in particular that whole Joshua tree, or I guess that's just a tree, just disappeared. So again, let's duplicate the layer. We'll delete the layer mask, and then we'll put this layer into darken blending mode. And other than areas where the mask was ineffective along some of the horizon, that does a beautiful job. I'll just target this mask, go back to my brush tool, paint with black in those areas where we have big gaps. And we have a finished image. And that's all there is to it. That's how you can very quickly use blending modes to fine-tune some of these fuzzy edges along a horizon where you have trees and bushes and so forth when you're replacing a sky. If you have any questions, please let me know, and have a great day.